Our kitchen table beginnings. I've always been proud of my beginnings, though they were pretty humble. I grew up in Black working class Detroit. The 1950s and 60s were my growing up decades. My two sisters have always been my very best friends. They're like a gift that I have carried with me throughout my entire life. We kind of grew up in my grandmother's beauty salon, and I hated it, but I learned a tremendous amount about hair. My grandmother was definitely my first teacher when it came to hair. She was trained in the C.J. Walker tradition and called herself a beauty culturalist. I developed Sisterlocks in the early 1990s when I was an associate professor of Africana Studies and French at San Diego State University. The development of Sisterlocks took a couple of years at least, but once I was satisfied with my creation, I quite naturally wanted to share it with the countless other women and men also who were searching for a way to wear their hair that was natural, non-greasy, versatile, and affirming. This picture captures the early kitchen table beginnings of Sisterlocks. There's myself and my two sisters, Carol and Celeste. That would be about 1993. The Sisterlocks company started as a home-based business and has grown slowly but steadily over the years. The Sisterlocks approach, as we call it, really is a combination of three principles. The first one is that our hair dilemmas are not exactly about hair. It has more to do with our self-image. What kind of look do we want to project that's going to be rewarded and not punished, let's say in the workplace or out in the community, at church, even in the home? We also see our hair dilemmas playing out in the goals that we set for ourselves and how we believe we have to look in order to attain those goals. For all these reasons and more, our hair dilemmas actually connect to our sense of self-identity, which is still, to some extent, a source of confusion and sometimes even anger for us. The second principle is that the value of natural hair is not intrinsic. This means that it's a value that we place on hair, and that has to do with our cultural history, our past, and our present. And finally, the third principle is that until natural hair is prominent among our hair care choices, hair alteration like weaves, relaxers, wigs will continue to have the unfortunate stigma of the cover up. Often, when I talk about Sisterlocks to groups of people, I focus on these three principles, sometimes without explicitly referring to them, because it provides a way of thinking about our hair. It takes it out of the just skill set conversation and puts it into a more cultural and historical conversation. Because we deal with things all the time that have to do with hair, but that have to do with much, much more our place in society, our self esteem, and so forth. This understanding helps people develop a full appreciation of what our journey has been all about. It took several years to develop the Sisterlocks company to the point where I could be sure that it was going to last. Shortly after this initial period, we found ourselves embroiled in a lengthy court battle with the California Board of Barbering and Cosmetology. Essentially, the board wanted to get control over our natural hair technique and, in fact, all natural hair techniques, locking, twisting, etc., as part of their purview within the state of California. However, they didn't have a curriculum of their own that covered natural hair, especially locks. Not only that, but their curriculum reflected that they didn't really have any understanding of how African textured hair behaves in its natural state. So we teamed up with an organization called the American Hair Braiders and Natural Hair Care Association. They go by ANA. Sisterlocks, along with Anna and the Braidery, which was a braiding salon, filed a lawsuit, and 2.5 years later, Sisterlocks was victorious. They were really at the forefront of a nationwide struggle to free natural hair practitioners like us from illogical and unreasonable legislation. And because this court case was in federal court, it established a precedent for all of the other states, so that since 1999, state by state, braiders, locticians, natural hair practitioners have been winning court battles against this unreasonable legislation. The judge ruled that the position taken by the Board of Cosmetology was unconstitutional. The ruling indicated that there was no rational relationship between existing California legislation and the actual practice of natural hair care, and Sisterlocks specifically. This was a huge precedent-setting case, and the rest, as they say, is history. We won our court case in 1999, freeing all natural hair practitioners within the state of California from the burden of having to go through a cosmetology system that did not teach or test anything about what we do. Our California victory set the precedent for natural hair practitioners and their successes throughout the entire country. All of this came about because I was really just someone who wanted to be able to wear my natural hair in small stylable locks, and I didn't know how to do that. I had never seen that. So I just struck out on my own. Who would have thought that my own very personal hair journey would result in my being associated with a movement, really, that changed an entire industry and impacted so heavily on the economic freedom of African American people?